Hey, what is going on, guys? So I think we can all agree that studying takes far too much time. So what I want to do in this video is show you guys how you can remember more of what you learn, even if you're spending fewer actual hours studying. And the way to do that is by spacing out that study time. This is a technique called spaced repetition, and to do it, you add progressively longer and longer time intervals in between each of your study sessions. So in this video, I want to show you exactly how you can do that, both with your paper flashcards and with apps, both for smartphones and computers. But first, I wanted to get into why this technique is so powerful, and also talk to you a little bit about the history behind it and how it relates to our memories in general. Spaced repetition leverages a memory phenomenon known as the spacing effect, which describes how our brains make better connections and overall remember things more effectively when we space out our learning over time. Here's how Pierce J. Howard, the author of my least favorite book to haul into coffee shops, puts it. Work involving higher mental functions, such as analysis and synthesis, needs to be spaced out in order to allow new neural connections to solidify. New learning drives out old learning when insufficient time intervenes. And we've actually known about, she eventually came to develop what's called the forgetting curve, which describes how memories decay over time. But what he also learned is that by spacing out his efforts to memorize these lists, he could put in less actual study time to get them memorized perfectly. For does the spacing effect work? Well, to put it in simple terms, it turns out that one of the most important parts of the learning process is actually forgetting. Now, what forgetting truly is a subject for another video that I'll publish in the future, but the most important thing to note here is that the more we've forgotten something, that is, the harder we have to work to retrieve it since we last learned it or studied it, the greater the increase in learning will be. To make this a bit more clear, here's how the author Benedict Carey, who wrote the book How We Learn, explains it. Some amount of breakdown must occur for us to strengthen learning when we revisit the material. Without a little forgetting, you get no benefit from further study. It is what allows learning to build, like an exercised muscle. And that's the main reason why Carey calls spaced repetition one of the most powerful methods for remembering what you learn in his book. And I would add to that the fact that you can do this with basically any other learning technique. It's entirely complementary because it's all about just modifying the time periods in which you study. You can do anything within those time periods, you're just using the time periods as intelligently as possible. With that being said, now I want to get into how you can put spaced repetition into action and implement it into your own study systems. And we're going to talk about apps and computer programs that you can use in a minute here. An app, and there are a lot of contenders in this area, but I want to focus first on what is probably the most popular one right now, and that is called Anki. Anki has a huge community, it's insanely customizable, and best of all, it has apps for almost every platform out there, and almost all of them are free, with the exception of the iPhone app, which oddly costs a whopping $25. Now, I think the price is that high because it's their way of basically letting people support the app since it's free everywhere else, but if you're on an iPhone and you don't want to pay that much, fear not, because Anki also has a companion web app called Anki Web, which is accessible from mobile Safari, so you can use that for free if you want. Now, with Anki, creating cards is really easy, and I really like the fact that you can add basically any kind of media you want to your cards, including pictures, which is awesome because adding pictures to your flashcards can really help increase retention. However, the killer feature of Anki is the ability to rate cards based on difficulty when you're studying them. So essentially, when you turn a card over, you can tell the program how hard it was for you to dredge the answer up from the depths of your memory, and it will use that data to decide how long it's going to be before you see that card again. And that's really the main strength of spaced repetition apps versus a paper system. Each individual card can be tracked, can have a difficulty rating, and can be adjusted in the algorithm so you're getting the most benefit of the spacing effect. Anki is definitely not the only spaced repetition app out there though, so if you're looking for alternatives, I've got a few things in mind for you to take a look at. Number one being an app called Tiny Cards, which I showed off in my previous video on how to make better flashcards. Now, Tiny Cards is only for the iPhone, unfortunately, but there should be an Android version coming soon. And honestly, when compared to Anki, I think it's a lot more simple, a lot prettier, and the process of making cards is more fun and faster because they have an excellent system for adding images to your cards. Aside from Tiny Cards, there are also apps like Flashcards Deluxe, Memrise, SuperMemo, Mnemoscene, Eidetic, Quizlet, and probably a bunch of others that I don't even know about right now.